And so, what's your plan kind of moving forward? I guess your kind of 5-year plan. What are you going to keep doing in the real estate area beyond, building your current multifamily projects?
Okay. So, for people living in Washington, the basically same Senate House bill that was passed in Oregon just cleared the House, the Washington House. That means that at least duplexes will be allowed in every single-family residential lot. So if you're in Vancouver, keep an eye on that. There's a gajillion bills in Oregon and Washington that are going to make it easier for single-family lots to either be split or basically having more housing options. So what I'm doing is getting more money so we can basically do more stuff regionally.
Hey guys, welcome to episode 31 of the Realized Gains podcast. I'm Stephen Tran. I'm an Oregon realtor, and I'm a multifamily investor and a single-family investor.
And I'm your co-host, Jordan Lee, mortgage lender based in Portland, Oregon, licensed in about 7 states, and I invest in single-family homes. Who are we interviewing today?
Yeah, so today we interviewed our dear friend, Ken Kinoshita. He's AREA Portland's president. AREA stands for the Asian Real Estate Association of America, and he's also an architect, and he tells us so many interesting details about how he uses his career to help out other investors.
Yeah, he also has a great story about living and investing in real estate in New York, and what he did to be able to remodel that and keep it as a viable rental in a kind of tough, high-priced market.
Yeah, no, I find it really interesting. Some people say you can't invest in places like San Francisco, LA, New York, but he shows us his one example, which is amazing and has done extremely well. And so I'm really excited to share with you that one.
Yeah, don't forget to like, follow, and share. Hey guys, welcome to the Realized Gains podcast. I'm Stephen Tran. And I'm your co-host, Jordan Lee. And today we have a super special guest, Ken Kinoshita. Ken, would you mind just giving us a quick introduction, how you made it, what your career arc is, and what made you come out to Portland, and
who you are?
Yeah, who you are.
Okay. His first disclosure, I don't want to say I made it. I'm making it, but okay, that's a terrible start, right? Okay, so I'm an architect by training. So I went to 5 years of college, and then
Where'd you go to school?
At the Rhode Island School of Design.
Okay.
And when you graduate as an architect major, then you have to put your time in for 3 years before you can basically take the exams. I did, so I got an architecture license, and I worked as an architect for about 6 years. And
where was that?
It was actually 2 outfits. The first one, I was doing exhibition design for design museums. And the second outfit I was doing...
And you were staying in the Rhode Island area, or...?
No, I was in New York City.
Okay.
And then my second stint being an architect was doing a lot of residential work, higher end-ish, around $500-600 a square foot. And then mostly, it's New York, so there's not that much ground ups, mostly larger apartments, and also some very... typical New York hipster restaurants. And when you're a designer, you are trained to envision, a space and how it gets occupied, and then negotiate how the engineering and the building codes affect all that, and you put all that together and then create space. But when it comes to actually physically putting something together, you actually have very limited knowledge. That's actually the general contractor realm. Mm-hmm. But one day I was just drawing a waterproofing detail, and I realized I had no idea what I was drawing. So I went to my boss and I'm like, how the hell does this work? And am I supposed anyways.
That's okay.
Okay. And he said, well, if you really want to learn about this, you should go into construction. So one thing led to the next. And a few months later, I was working as a project manager for it's called Eurostruct, which is a mid-size general contracting firm that mostly does super high-end residential. So we were building a lot of townhomes and a lot of the larger art galleries and what else? Private schools. So high-end commercial, institutional, and residential.
So you went from being on the design side to the construction side.
Yeah.
And was your job to kind of help interface with architects and?
Yeah. So one of the advantages of being an architect going to project management is that you understand how the design is put together. So. I guess in my case, then I was a face of the company to the client, and also interfacing with the architect, with the engineers, with the inspectors, and for better and worse, the way that the company was at basically came to be is literally there was two Irish guys who were doing like small residential jobs like bathrooms and kitchens and. Apparently, their boss ran out of money, so instead of paying them, he gave them basically all the tools and equipment that they needed. So they started on their own, and in the span of 20 years, they're from doing that to basically 16,000 square feet per building.
Crazy.
But it ran like a small company. So what it meant is that I was doing kind of like 2-3 jobs at the same time. The superintendent's job, which is being on the field and coordinating with all the subs, and then the project engineer who's doing all the paperwork to make sure that the project, how do you call it, like all the specifications were being ordered per the architect's design. And the third one was project management, was basically looking at the overall scheduling, budget management, and then interfacing with the client. So the hours were brutal, but I learned a lot.
I'm curious, coming out of architecture school. I mean, obviously you're in New York, so I'm assuming that you're not doing brand new construction from a lot. I'm sure you're working with existing spaces. Can you kind of tell us the difference between obviously building something brand new as an architect and, renovating an existing space?
Yeah, renovating buildings is really tricky, especially in New York, because the building stock is really old, and then since basically, New York is vertical, which means that everybody's living above each other. So the plumbing code, basically building codes in general is super strict.
I heard that if you could do code in New York, then you can do code anywhere.
Yeah, exactly.
It's the most onerous, yeah.
Yeah. So also getting permits is really hard. Getting your building approved is really hard. So one of the things, as an architect, the first thing you have to do is basically do a really good survey of what's there, but it's old, so all the walls are crooked, and then it's also New York, and you're literally designing down to the quarter inch because every single square inch in your design matters. So just making sure that everything fit was always challenging, and went both ways. As a contractor, then the architect would assume that like the pipe was 2 inches, but in reality that's the inside diameter. Once you add the walls, it's 2.5, and the half-inch actually would throw your entire the architect's design off. So it was a lot of like hair splitting and negotiating with very tight tolerances. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, no, exactly. Because I don't have a good grasp of what architecting is, and so that's very interesting. Can you kind of tell us after New York and after you were doing this construction thing, what you moved on to next?
So I had this lifelong dream of riding my bicycle across the country, and had been trying to do that for 10 years, and it's like I would get a new job, or my wife get a new job, or something else would happen, or we'd buy a house. But it was 2018, and we were 35, turning 36 then. And we're like, well, if you don't do it now, we didn't have a kid back then. We felt that if we didn't then, we would never happen. So, we grabbed our bikes, and then we had all the equipment, and we took off from our house in Brooklyn and made it to Seattle. And then what happened was that one of my close friends from architecture school, with whom actually I worked with in one of the same firms, had moved from New York to Portland, and she asked me to visit. She was really insistent. I was like, yeah, sure, I'll stop by. And when I showed up, she was showing me this community art center that she was basically the executive director for, and showed me this 800 square foot room. And it was just basically an old church building. And she said, yeah, we're going to have some a new coffee shop that's going to be part of the center, and it's going to, basically be a great addition to the community. And I looked around. It was September 4th, I think. And I asked her, it's like, when are you supposed to open? And she said, October 13th. And I told her, well, you're never going to make it. You haven't even started demo. And she famously said, well, that's why you're here, because I really need your help. So back then, I actually assumed I was going to go back to my old job, and I was actually supposed to work on the basically a townhome renovation for the producer of the Hamilton show, because of course it's New York. He was doing really well with that show. So it was
big names, of course.
Yeah. So anyways, I was supposed to go back to that. Speaking of permits, the permits were delayed. So I was like, I can take a month off to help you out. In the meantime, we made it. We opened in time.
Really?
Yeah, it was brutal.
Impressive.
And in the meantime, she's like, yeah, and I also got this investment money to start doing some multifamily projects. Why don't we go at it together? And I guess there's part of me that definitely, when you're riding your bicycle for 3 months straight, then you have a lot of time to think. And there's one thing that sit well with me with doing high-end residential is that usually my construction budgets for that would be $15 million. And when you think about $50 million worth of building, you think a lot of concrete, a lot of materials, $1 million worth of cabinets, and you name it. And after all that, 4 people move in. And I just something about the waste of the amount of resources that would go into just house 4 people, was something that I wanted to change in my own career. And since the focus on this multifamily projects was to provide housing, at least for first-time homeowners, and also with a sustainable lens to it, then a bit of a whim, I said, yeah, let's try it out. So that's what brought me to Portland.
Can you tell us a little bit more about this multifamily project that you guys got started? Or
Yeah, so what happened was that we had a couple projects, and then the pandemic hit, and then we had some building permits that just totally stalled for some, architectural things that we're trying out. And then there was something that we were in contract, and we just walked away because we had no idea where things were going. So we kind of had to take a pause and then reassess what we wanted to do. So after all that, we basically got actually more money, and we ended up
good problem.
Yeah. And then we ended up starting to work on one of the projects we have. It's 20 units, 5 fourplexes. These ones are going to be Earth Advantage certified, which means that they're high performing homes, net zero ready. So that means that the with solar panels, the overall energy consumption, through the year, whatever the house uses for heating, cooling, will be completely offset by the solar panels.
So you're going to have the solar panels installed, or the homeowner can put those on if they want to make it net zero?
When we started, this was before the interest hikes. We thought that it would be a for sale product, but now we have to remain a little flexible whether it's going to be for rent or not. And that'll change how we finally execute it. We might leave them as what's called solar ready, which is you just have all the infrastructure and the last thing you do is just put the solar panels on. So again, you have to kind of hedge depending on how much money you want to sink in for a for sale product or a rental product.
And what made you guys decide to do multiple fourplexes instead of like a 20 unit or something like that?
So I guess being in Portland, Portland and also Oregon are two interesting places actually nationwide. The first one in Oregon is because in 2019 there was a House bill called HB 2001, and it was the first bill, if I understand correctly, in the country that allowed more types of housing options in basically every single family zoned residential lot. So that in what basically the bill says, it goes to every single city and town in the state and tells them you have 2 years to change your codes so that now you're allowing at least a duplex into each lot. And that could be either splitting a home, building an ADU in the house. And in Portland went one step further, would say, well, we're going to allow up to fourplexes.
So that was a zoning decision then.
Yeah.
You didn't have to rezone.
Yeah, we didn't have to rezone. And we said, well, if we can, and we knew that there are a lot of bills across the country that were either voted on or being proposed. And that was just a matter of time for basically that to become ubiquitous across the country. Especially California, Washington, Oregon, and starting in this region. So we said if we can find out how to build fourplexes, like either rent or sell, and develop them, then we'll be just like one step ahead of everybody else as they're figuring that out. So we might actually have a good pipeline for many years.
And where are you at with that project now?
Well, it turns out that speaking of permits, getting permits in Portland is maybe not as hard as New York, but it's about like basically one notch down from there.
Yeah.
So it's called the entitlement phase, which is what we did was we found a 1 acre lot in Cully, and then we filed to get it subdivided into 5 because that's what the zoning yielded
into
right
5
now.
Single family lots.
So the fourplexes on each one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
And the city came back and said, oh, well, you have to build a road. So we're like, oh my God, this is crazy. We're going to lose 30% of the site. So we crunched numbers again. It was going to be fine. So we ended up going forward with the purchase, also knowing that again, you have to always think exit strategies because you have put a lot of money in. That if something were to change in the market and we would make it to the finish line of the entitlement process, which is road building and lot subdivision, that at least we would basically break even with at that point. And then we can choose whether to go forward with the fourplex building. So where we at right now is we actually finally got the road approval drawings, and then basically the first threshold where any objections from neighborhood associations were all cleared. So now basically we just have to wait for the city to do their own processing so that we can actually go forward with the road construction, which is one of the requirements to get the lots approved by the county.
I see. Wow. Yeah.
So it's very complicated.
And I mean, we know you have your own business. Were you working on any other projects during the time?
Yeah. So while this thing was.
And you can pitch your business. It's okay. You can pitch your business.
Okay, so my business, apart from these partnerships that I have, is develop projects, and what I provide are owners representative and development management services. So the thing that that I have an edge over a lot of other people is that I have as much experience as a contractor as an architect. So what that allows me to do is basically represent either an individual or an institution's interest in basically trying to navigate the really complex process of getting substantial the building either capital improvement project or a grand building project. So what I do is from the get-go is help them understand what the feasibility studies would look like, and then make sure that whatever they're going to go through really maximizes their value, and then continue doing that by selecting the right team. One of the things that happens with construction, and one of the reasons why it's high risk on the development, and this really it's very people dependent. So what I mean by that is if you have an architect and a contractor that don't work well together, I guess typically what it does, it makes your project a lot more expensive. Worst case, it could actually sink your project in the construction end. Also, if you don't get the right architect to design this building, they might actually be completely either overwhelmed with work or completely underqualified to do whatever you want to do. So that could result in either a lot of costs through delays or just poor design. In the worst case, it can sink your project again. And it applies within contractor too. So I'm able to kind of understand where the architect's capacity is, both in terms of personnel and capacity, being basically having worked in the firm, but also the contractors and in kind of put together a team that will basically really minimize that risk, but also maximize the value for my clients.
And in terms of like knowing the zoning, would you say that's more on your side as an architect or more on your side as a contractor? And do most architects need to figure out and know zoning, or is that their job?
The zoning for architects is, I would say, pretty relevant. That's where you start. Let's say, for example, Jordan and I are working on a project in Salem, and we're looking at land lot. And the first thing you do is look at the zoning, because the zoning will tell you how big the building can be, what type of occupancy would be. It'll tell you about parking, like how it interfaces with the sidewalk.
What sort of improvements you need to make.
So you look at that, but then, so I would say the first week or two, just basically do a deep dive on that. But really what governs the architect's work when it comes to the inside of the building will be the building code. And the difference between those is the building code is going to tell you how big the rooms are, how big the windows need to be, how thick your walls need to be for X type of thing, what type of fire separations you need, how many stairs. So then you do a lot more referencing of that to basically design interior. So in theory, an architect uses the building code a lot more than the zoning.
And building code can be totally different for a fourplex versus a commercial.
Yeah, so there's a threshold.
Restaurant structure.
Right. There's the I guess in Oregon, there's the commercial building code, and then the residential. And then Portland has actually another layer of requirements too on top of that, which actually speaks to a little bit of why is it that it's so expensive and to build and also to design, because then you kind of have to start from scratch as an architect. Let's say, for example, you're an architect in Portland and you get a project in Salem, then you have to kind of like pick up Salem's code and read and make sure that it complies, and then send it over to their planning department. and a little bit by trial and error, then find out they have like some requirement buried some in their code, and then get feedback on that and having to change your design. So the issue with that then is that you have to rebuild that knowledge base as an architect every time.
Yeah.
And somebody has to pay for it, which usually is, either your client who's trying to get a building or the homeowner who's trying to buy a house.
So somebody's paying you to go read the zoning codes for your hourly rate?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's part of feasibility, right? You
Yeah.
read through zoning, and then you go to the jurisdiction and say, hey, based on my reading, this is what can be built. And then you're like, yeah, well, maybe, but then you didn't read this little obscure little line that's going to like do this, blah, blah, blah. And then you go back and then...
Ultimately, though, you're helping people figure out, okay, what's the maximum you can build on this lot? Like, let's say, somebody has a house with a extra large lot in their backyard. You could be like, okay, you could split it up into this, and here's some different options of what you can do, and here's, you can help them figure out how to run the project too.
Architects, I would say, are good at looking at it on a case-by-case basis.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say, having done now development, really the developers are the ones who know that inside out, because they're constantly, first of all, if you're a good developer, you're constantly shopping for sites.
Yeah.
And two, then because of that, then you're constantly be like, okay, what about this lot? Okay, well now, and you see enough of them, and you're like, well, I know I can build this big and this tall and this many units. So you start layering that in. So I would say and developers are tree code experts. And the other tree code expert is a land use planner who, for example, in our case, we had to have the land subdivided. They know the zoning code inside out, and also the city processes to get it approved. So you do have to rely on a consultant like that.
So switching gears here, I know that you invested in property in New York. Talk to us a little bit about that and your kind of process and how you brought in your skills from your trade.
Okay, so just to, I guess, real quick quantifiables. This is a brick townhome built in 1880. It has
1880.
1880, yeah.
Wait, did you buy this initially as an investment?
No, it became an investment later, but initially we're just trying to buy a house for ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And in 2016, the market in New York was pretty similar to what Portland became in the past 2 years. Multiple offers, a lot of cash buyers, and then you're making offers left and right, and then just getting outbid all the time.
Right. To throw the yard at it.
Yeah. So we found this home that had a lot of, we felt there was a lot of character, which meant that a lot of original details. We were the third owners in 130 years.
Wow.
That's kind of crazy.
And typical New York story, right? There was like some German immigrant family who first bought it, and then some Italian immigrant family bought it from the German family about 15 years later. But then it stayed within the family for 2 generations until the second generation basically aged and actually aged until they were no longer able to live in there. So we bought into 2016, and after looking for a year and just continue getting outbid. And what's interesting about the New York market, having done so many bidding, is that in New York, the real estate is so expensive, but also typically your property taxes are so low that
that is interesting.
The existing condition of the building within the margin actually doesn't make that much of a difference in the price. So then we realized that we were actually better off buying as much building as we could, because we understood that that's really what drives the appreciation in real estate, at least in the sector that we were looking at.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, especially in the New York market where land
counts.
is so valuable. You're going vertical,
yeah. Mm-hmm. So, but I mean, I would say the land itself has some value, but most of the lots are not that much different in size. So you're really looking at like 90% of the lots are for residential, are ranging between like I don't know, 16 by 100 to maybe 20, 25 by 100. What really matters is how many square feet of built square feet do you have in your house.
Mhm.
Again, the entry cost to building, adding square feet in New York is really expensive. Again, it takes a lot of time, and then it's really expensive to get an architect. Labor is more expensive.
Is it that expensive to get an architect if you're an architect?
Well,
You're charging yourself.
yeah, exactly. There's a huge spectrum of types of services an architect can give you. You could go from like the very cookie cutter who literally just like draws up literally one floor plan, and he's like, here you go, like, I just came up with this in 10 hours, and and you can just basically run with it. And I would say for most ground up residential buildings where your GC can fill in a lot of the blanks when it comes to the actual detailing, actually not an issue.
Yeah.
And then there's the other end, which is basically getting, a pretty well acclaimed designed architect, and they're gonna go through every single little nut and bolt and every single like finish and all that. And
I remember looking at
could
blueprints,
cost you-
it'll say like what exactly type of screw.
Yeah,
you're using.
exactly.
Like,
and it has to be like a brass one,
yeah.
not Phillips. It needs
Yeah.
to be flat, and
Yeah.
the flat screw needs to be horizontal. That's what I used to build, and those are the architects I used to be able to deal with. They'll probably tack on another 8-10% to your construction costs.
Mhm.
And if you're building, let's say, 10 million, you're looking at $1 million in architect fees.
yeah,
And then there's everything in between.
right.
So part of, for me, like, again, kind of transitioning out of architecture and doing North Rep is like understanding that there's that entire range. I mean, and go to the client and be like, do you want a really nice building that's designed down to the screw, or you want something that basically just you want to go fast and hard? Then you find somebody who actually, an architect who can solve the problem in the way that your client is envisioning their building to be.
And for your property, obviously, did you start renovating it right away to live in? And then, because I know you transitioned it.
Yeah, what kind
Yeah,
of
okay,
condition
so
was
I
it in?
closed July 1st. The overall square footage is 2,800.
Okay.
And then
And it was considered a single family townhouse?
it was a single family. So New York has this thing, again, it's really old. There's a lot of buildings that were up before any records were kept on what the
Yeah, 1880. I mean.
original occupancy of the project was, or the house was. So in that case, like the zoning tells you that you can basically build up the duplex, and it was a single family. We're like, yeah, let's just add a unit there and then get a renter in there because just offset the mortgage costs, right? So we closed July 1st. Then we
With
celebrated
the
4th of
intention
July.
of making it a dupe. You knew you were going to
Yeah.
do that because you understood the code and you weren't
Yeah,
afraid
understood
of
the
that.
code. Again, it was about buying as much square footage as we could. So what happened too was that then everything went to down payment and the closing costs, and then and I said, well, I guess if I do it myself, then labor is basically free. So I started on July 4th. We celebrated there. July 5th, I started demoing, and then I finished in September. Basically, we put it on the market in September 1st.
Oh, like a month later?
2 months.
2 months. 2 months. Okay.
Full gut.
Wow.
Did you have a team, or was it just?
I was me.
And by on the market, you mean you were renting the other unit?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So back then it was in construction. I would start at 7, and then we would finish at 3:30. I'll take the subway. It'll take about 30 minutes.
Oh,
40
because you
minutes to
weren't
get
living
home.
there when you.
No,
bought it.
I was working at the job site.
No, I'm talking
Oh, I
about
see.
going to work.
So-
yeah,
I see.
day
I
job.
went to work, day job, come back, and then usually I would have 2 friends from the job site be like, hey, like, do you want to work from like 4 to 8 or something? And they'll come with me and they'll just basically go at it from 4 to 8, and I'll keep it going to like 10, 11. And then I'll wake up at 5:30 in the morning and then go back to work. And then I just did that during the weekdays and then work Sundays too. But, and then I got a place rented out in September 15th.
And did you have to like do all the stuff like electrical, plumbing, that kind of stuff, or was it?
Back then, I didn't touch. I did the waste plumbing, and then the electric was redone, but by somebody else. I didn't want to touch it then.
So you did have an electrician come out,
right? But for the most part, it was just how would I describe this properly? Okay, so this is also a bit of a New York quirk. I think now it applies to Portland based on where the market has gone in the last 10 years, is that it's so expensive to rent now that also the housing, and also so expensive to build that the housing stock here is getting older, and the baseline quality of unit that you can rent on like an old house just keeps on decreasing.
Right.
And I realized that the best value you can get is something that looks clean and it's thoughtfully laid out, and that you would probably do well. I didn't know how well, but we put it in the market. And then, I'm an architect, so I did spend a lot of time thinking, well, how do I create like a place that feels nice? Not expensive, not luxurious, just like it feels good. So we put it up,
Feels
and then
clean,
a week,
feels like home. Yeah.
A week later, like 4-5 people came in. Like we put it on a Thursday, and Saturday 5 people come in, and some people were begging us, and we're like, oh my God, like what's happening?
Yeah.
And we forgot that the median level of the housing stock that people are looking at is so shitty that once you get to the point of just decent and nice, people really respond positively to that. And I was actually really, in a way, actually almost influenced the reason why I'm here, because I realized that if I can accomplish that and just provide people, I'm already improving people's lives.
Yeah. No, I mean, like I said, I remember going to, even in San Francisco, looking for apartments and having people shout over my head that they're going to pay $100 more or $200 more in rent.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, didn't get to bidding war because also we were, I guess we could say like we're mom and pop landlords. We're not price gouging,
Oh, these were the same. I'm just saying people are yelling over my head too.
Yeah. But we definitely had, 2 people apply that weekend, and then next thing you know, it's like.
Did you do rent comps or anything, or did you just?
Yeah, we looked around, but back then.
Yeah, how did you advertise then?
Back then, I guess
wasn't that
it was a bit of a scrappy move. Where like
internet.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. We went to MySpace. That's 2016. So
it's 2016, so not that long ago.
And Craigslist.
But still Craigslist, yeah.
Craigslist. Like I said, I'm not getting any hits on Craigslist now. It's all Facebook Marketplace and Apartments.com.
Oh,
and Zillow.
Zillow, yeah. Seems like.
So that was the first renovation. Then the second one was downstairs, where the unit where we lived in, which we had somebody move into when we moved out.
So you didn't do your side before you left?
No. And they rented out, and we had a tenant there for 3 years. And again, it's a house from 1880. It just had a gajillion problems. That
you said character. You should be a realtor.
Had a lot of character.
That's a lot of character.
It has a lot of character.
That's a realtor term.
Some moody characters. So yeah, last summer I went back because I had a tenant turnover, and the issue was that my maintenance costs were so high because, especially with the plumbing keeping backing up, that and again I live in Portland now. The house in New York. It's not as if I can just hop in the plane and fix that. So hiring people to do it was also very expensive. So we decided to fly. I had the flexibility to basically keep my my current workload and do the same thing and just
2 months banging out.
I'll say this: me and Ken are friends, and he kept sending me pictures of all the work he was doing. I was like, Ken, I do not work as hard as you. I do renovate my own properties, but not this much.
Yeah, because you redid everything again, right? All the plumbing, all
in
the
this case, well, the issues that I had to deal with was plumbing. Really old bathroom was falling apart, and also there was a lot of noise going from the tenant all the way upstairs to the middle floor where the bedrooms were located. And so I basically ripped all the ceilings down and they reframed something that was like acoustically isolated.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, we redid a lot of plumbing, and every time I touched something, we would just like run new electric cables too.
Yeah.
I'm curious because obviously you turned basically a single family into a duplex. Like, how does the doors work? Like, was there like how did you make the two separate
In
units?
this specific case, since it's a townhome, then there's an entrance. Well, you've seen like a crawl space. You got the stoop, you got the steps, and
Yep.
you got the door. You enter there, and there's a foyer. There's an entrance to the lower unit from there, and then you go up this. You go upstairs, and there's another door to the apartment, the upper apartment. That said, the stoop has another door underneath, and typically that's the one that when people live there use just because it's easier. You're off the sidewalk into the front stoop area, and then just walk in there.
Okay, so they have two full separate entrances basically
Yeah.
to the outside because the other person who has to go up the stairs can go up that main door and go all the way upstairs and in. And before that was just probably just open, right? Not a doorway.
That was open. So again, old houses, townhomes, one of the things that really get wear and tear are the stairs, right? Which beautiful stairs that tend to wind, but also after 130 years, like most of the steps are crooked by over 2 inches because
Because you always walk on the same side or whatever.
Exactly. So, definitely just like reprop the whole thing, reframe it, and then build a closed wall so that each unit gets its own privacy.
And did you basically, you said it was 2,800 square feet, so did you just basically split that in half, or was there a smaller unit, a bigger unit?
It was, it's we call it a 1.5 bedroom unit upstairs.
What's a half bed?
Basically, there's basically one room that's legally, you could call it a room, and there's something next to it, which it's too small to call it legally bedroom, but if you want to squeeze somebody in there, you could. And I guess what's interesting about that and
But it's
what
got like
actually
a door
works,
and everything. Yeah.
what we didn't want to do, since there's sound transmission issues, was basically get a family in there, because we just knew that was just going to be an issue. So in a way, like we designed it with having the ideal tenant in mind, was just basically a single young professional who
Needs an office.
needs an office and is also willing to pay a little bit of a premium to have a bedroom and also a nice place to call a home office.
Or like a little studio, recording studio or something. Yeah.
And then the downstairs, we have a backyard, which, there's just like, there's not many people who have access to a backyard in New York. So we knew that our edge there was to have something that catered to families. So that's a 2-bedroom, 2-bath, with basically with backyard access and in the full basement, and a washer and dryer in place, which I guess here it's just normal, but in New York, I remember telling a friend about it who was an architect, and he said, "What? You have a washer dryer in your house?" And I'm like, "Yeah."
Yeah, I didn't.
And
from
then-
San Francisco, so yeah, it's very rare in the city. It's
So-
very tight. So
There's one saying in New York that goes like, you made it when you have your own washer and dryer in your house. So I guess I made it there, but then
Yeah.
I moved here.
yeah. Well, I hope you have one here. You live in a house, right?
No, we usually no. I'm kidding.
Okay.
No, we do.
Okay, great. Oh, I do. Okay, so obviously, not a lot of people think of New York as a very investment-friendly place. It's a high cost of living
Super high cost.
location. Can you kind of run through the numbers of obviously what you bought it at, how much rent you're pulling in, how much it's appreciated? Because when I think of New York, when I think of San Francisco, LA, even Portland now, I think of them as appreciation markets. You make your money based off how much the property is growing in value. You might not cash flow,
Okay.
but I would love to hear what the numbers are on that property.
We bought it at $1,025,000 in 2016. And then right now it'll probably go for 1.7, 1.75. And interestingly enough, most of that appreciation happened the first. Well, it's been now 7 years since we bought it. Most of that appreciation happened in the first 4 years.
Right.
And right now we're pulling upstairs is 2350, 20, and then downstairs 46. So it's like $7,500.
Okay.
Wow.
Rent.
Yeah. So the rents are strong.
Yeah, it's strong. And what happened during the pandemic is that I'm not sure if you've read in the news, but like the Manhattan rental market really suffered
Just
from
collapsed,
that.
yeah.
And it's because if you're living in a 400 square foot studio in a tower sharing with a lot of people, and then you're transitioning to remote working, then the last place you want to be
Yeah. If you have a choice, you're not going to be living
in there. So the Brooklyn townhome market did really well through the pandemic, and it's still actually running pretty strong. So in that sense, and again, if you think like Portland has inventory issues, like think about New York, right? So in that sense, the rental market has done and continues to do really well in New York, especially for the type of product that we have.
Yeah. No, I mean, like I said, that's the only rental property you have, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
From a cash flow perspective, it's working now.
yeah, it's working. It's well, okay. So one of the again to answer your other questions, like in this this will answer two questions in one. Is New York a good place to invest? If you are looking to park money, a lot of it's always attracted that kind of investor, and one of the reasons is because property taxes are fairly low there. For
Yeah. What are the property taxes on what did you say, 1.8 million?
right now, we're paying $4,000,
Wow.
4,200 maybe.
Yeah.
Like that's
That's insane.
That's
On a-
insane
You said
low,
$1.75 million property.
Yeah.
home here. Yeah.
And then so you basically have a property with really low property
yeah.
taxes, and then in a market that is where inventory is always an issue. So in that sense, it's with the exception of the maybe a couple pandemic.
I mean, is there ever going to be a time where there's a buyer's market in New York?
Well, it hasn't been since probably since 9/11.
Okay.
And even then, it was just like a very specific
Yeah, that is
area
for, like-
of basically that the southern portion of Manhattan really suffered from that. But apart from that,
Probably for just a short time period.
yeah. And the thing, I'm not sure how long it was for, but it's basically being, for the most part, again, minus some window in the pandemic years, a bear market there for that long. And even like through the financial crash of 2008, what that had an effect in New York was that it stopped appreciating, but it didn't really quite go down.
But it didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is
just
in a
slowed
big,
down the.
yeah, and that actually basically what happened was that spurred another round of a lot of people investing in New York because they realized that, well, in 2008 with the economy collapsing, if New York basically didn't even go down, then it just made it clear that it was a really safe place to invest in, and it started attracting a lot of international investment. And what that did was just like exacerbate the inventory and also supply issues I'd already had.
Well, you guys have hurricanes now, so we'll see.
Yeah, well, Sandy, right? But
Yeah.
I mean, Sandy really affect the city, but did it affect real estate pricing? Yes, in places where it flooded. But when you, let's say, for example, there's this area called Red Hook in Brooklyn, which was one of the worst affected areas. And when you look at real estate, at the trends there, yes, it went down. But unfortunately, people are, one, myopic, and two, there's still basically fundamental inventory issues there. And went right back up.
So yeah, second floor and up, you're good.
Yeah. It's a good place to invest. Are the barriers to entry pretty high? yes, but once you're in there, it's a good place to park money.
I mean, I'll say this too. I mean, we don't have to just think of investing as looking for the best cash flow. I mean,
Yep.
equity growth is huge. I mean, that is some of the most impressive equity growth I've seen. That's like 650 grand.
Yeah.
And Jordan, how would we utilize like that equity to?
Well, yeah, I mean, you can, of course, tap it with the home equity line of credit or cash out refinance. Of course, you could sell too. But, to your point, you're probably going to want to keep that forever or until you want to invest in something bigger, right?
Yeah, I've been debating that a lot. Lately, one is because it's just uncomfortable to own something that's across the country.
Yeah, now that you've done the repairs,
Yeah.
are you having to deal with as much maintenance
No,
issues?
no.
Or is it
Zero,
feeling
but-
like you don't need to unload it anymore?
Yeah, but I think that was some of the things that I've understood from how I take things and then how a lot of landlords do in New York. Again, it's expensive, but my barrier of entry to fixing is much, much lower because I have no help, but also I put in a lot of labor. So I typically just like probably demo a little too much but when I'm done,
Right. Once you get started, you can't stop.
I mean,
That's
that's the best part. It's
Yeah.
the most fun.
but I just do go in and fix a lot of things that are like inside behind the surface of the building, with the intent of it lasting a long time. So now that I basically did these renovations, I haven't heard from my tenants. Actually, zero since they moved in October.
Are they paying? Are you sure
Yeah.
they didn't disappear?
No, actually, I did check in on them because they just got hit in the storm. It's like, hey, how's it going? Are you okay? Like, I haven't heard anything from you. Like, yeah, we're super happy. We love it here. It's like, how awesome is that, too?
Yeah.
Well, especially since you were having so much issues before, it's very gratifying to go in, fix it, and then
Yeah. And again, I moved to Portland basically to start doing my part in finding ways to building housing. So there's this soft intellectual part of me that does find it really gratifying that to know that there's a family living there now and probably getting a much better place than they would otherwise.
Yeah.
Paying for fair market rent, but all in all, probably improving the quality of life they could have in the other unit.
Yeah, and what I admire about you is because you sent me so many photos and pictures of the work you're doing, and we're different landlords. Like, I don't think I would ever go to those lengths because, well, one, I'm not as good as you at that. But two, for me, I'll deal with maintenance. I'm here, I can fix something.
Right.
I might not fix it 100% where it'll never happen again, but I'll get it, quote unquote, good enough. Because that's just my skill set and that's just where my budget is. But you go above and beyond. You fix deferred maintenance. You are going to make it last. You're fixing stairs. I mean, you propped up stairs. I'd be like, what's that another 2 inches? You just take a small step and then a big step and you're okay. But, you go above and beyond. And, like I said, that can add tons of value to you as an investor because your time is valuable. And now you're not dealing with calls and people complaining and people saying, I'm going to move out because this is broken and this is broken and I hate this. So there is value in that, which I appreciate.
Yeah, and the value is also in your exit. Again, with any investment, you have to keep an eye on the exit. So when I had that turnover, we did contemplate putting it in the market just to see how much we could get and see if it would actually make sense. And in the way that we just people were responding, people when something's built and it's actually built just beyond just patching, people notice. And again, you don't have to go extravagant. It just needs to look basically thought through, right?
Yeah. And I mean, you basically turned a home that somebody would just buy as their primary now, somebody can think of as an investment.
Exactly.
And if it's done well and it's going to garner more rents than the other properties, I think you might get a little bidding war down the line.
Yeah, for this one, it was great. So I started in August 10th, and then and I was at it for 2 months. I flew back for my son's birthday, and then went back at it for another week. We put in the market in October, and we're New York acts is a little bit the same as as Portland, that once you start reaching like the towards November, then it's putting something in the market. It gets a little, the market's slower. So we really wanted to get it in by September, but it didn't finish in time, so it became October. But we had somebody basically sign as a tenant within like 8 days.
Nice.
They just walked in and said, "We love this thing. It's like, can we just sign?" And then they moved in 10 days after putting in the market. It was great because also when you have that much real estate, your holding costs are pretty high. So that like that low vacancy rate is for us, at least for me, matters a lot.
What's your plan kind of moving forward? I guess your kind of 5-year plan. What are you going to keep doing in the real estate area beyond, building your current multifamily projects?
Well, okay. So for people who live in Washington, the basically same Senate House bill that was passed in Oregon just cleared the House, the Washington House. That means that at least duplexes will be allowed in every single-family residential lot. So if you're in Vancouver, keep an eye on that. There's a gajillion bills in Oregon and Washington that are going to make it easier for single-family lots to either be split or basically having more housing options. So what I'm doing is getting more money so we can basically do more stuff regionally. And I would say if you're already own a home in Vancouver, keep an eye on, I forget the exact House bill number, but basically it's going in it's likely it'll pass because it passed the House, I think, by a 92-7 vote. I might be wrong. That might be the other one, but basically right now, in the way that the House and the state Senate are set in Washington State, a lot of these House bills are going to get approved. So you will be able to build, split your lot down to, or the minimum size lot goes down to 1,500.
Wow.
Which would actually allow a lot of lots to get split.
Yeah.
So if you're already sitting on real estate and you're looking for ways of maximizing value, I think that there's going to be a lot of potential there.
So this applies to like adding an ADU, all the stuff, not just...
Yeah, you can add an ADU and condoize it. The other one in Portland that we're trying to do is, I think the lesson from entitlement in Portland is that it just takes so much time that it's just not worth it for us from a, I call it a learning perspective too. And thankfully what we have is like basically value driven investors that are willing to also hold on to something in the long term if the exit rate doesn't look that promising. So I think with Portland's new basically the residential infill project is the zoning reforms that Portland put in that allows more housing options, duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes. If you do affordable, you can actually build up to sixplex. As long as half the units are
on single-family zones.
On the single-family zone stuff.
Okay.
That was basically
all six attached.
Half of them have to be.
Yeah. I asked the city, can I build a fourplex by basically building two structures? And they're like, nope, they need to be connected. So a plex by definition needs to be a connected or what could be a contiguous structure.
Okay, so it can't be 6 individual houses.
In theory, you can get away by basically building two things that are connected by a breezeway because then it's one building. And that was a loophole that I know some people have used and gotten away with.
So a breezeway meaning you can just have like a roof there and...
yeah, let's just say you have two buildings that are
a piece of wood, just touch it.
Exactly. Yeah, there's like a common shed that defines some common entrance. That was valid. I'm not sure if because that zoning got basically revised into the 2.0 version.
Mm.
And so I'm not sure if they put the kibosh in that, but what they did with the 2.0 is actually making subdivisions in residential lots in Portland a lot easier.
Mm.
So if you basically, what it allows you to do is build, let's say, 3 townhomes and not go through this crazy land use process that we're going through. And there's basically a streamlined approval process so that you can subdivide the lot and basically allow for.
And this
townhomes
is
to be built.
active now.
This is active. It got passed
Okay.
last year.
So just being creative. So like you said, you could do 4 units or 6 units if half of them were affordable. If you did this, you could basically, and thinking with an investment mindset, condoize each one and sell them off individually. Would that be legal?
Yes.
Wow.
Mm.
That's basically the purpose of this is to.
Well, I was thinking
Reduce-
them in rental, but then I was like, I could just break these off and sell a couple of them off.
Yeah,
right?
in part of the new round of zoning
Interesting.
reforms is also making it easier for you to condoize an ADU.
I like that.
So could you do a 6-plex plus ADUs?
No,
Oh, okay.
now you're
There's-
getting greedy.
well, okay, so you can build basically one structure with 2 ADUs.
Okay.
You can build a duplex with 1 ADU,
Okay.
and then or a triplex
Right.
with 0 ADUs, 4-plex or 6-plex.
Okay.
Well, 5. You can do 5-plex, but by the point you're building 5, I don't
You
know why would you be building 6. But they do need to be affordable.
So probably best case scenario is build 6 with
Right.
put them
So
as
if you-
condos.
If you want to
Yeah,
maximize
have to be
market
affordable.
rate,
Mhm.
4-plex.
Yeah.
If you want to insert an affordable layer to it, then 6-plex. But I guess for us, then that made us realize that probably the best thing for us to do is basically create a pipeline of just existing home, find ways with which we can either keep it, and if not, just go down the route of building a 4-plex. That's option A. And 2 is building it in the back and condoize. Actually, duplex up front, ADU in the back.
Mm.
And and I guess Portland's still a strong rental market. So
Yeah.
Yeah. Or
in the-
Portland Metro.
Portland Metro is a
Yeah.
strong rental market.
I mean, rents are not cheap anywhere in Portland. Yeah.
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
So it's a risk mitigator. Then, if you're able to do that, then if your for sale project doesn't doesn't pencil out at exit, then holding it, as long as you're not crazy leveraged, then probably cash flow post development. So
Interesting.
now I think the pipeline is to basically. I think that's where the real opportunity is.
Okay. Awesome.
Great.
And if you didn't know, Ken is the president of ARIA Portland, the Asian Real Estate Association of America for the Portland chapter. And Ken, if somebody was going to walk up to you tonight at tonight's member mixer and ask you how to get started in real estate, what would you tell them?
You mean real estate in your
In general, and like maybe they wanted to invest in real estate, or maybe they wanted to get into developing, or we're curious.
real estate investing, not doing it as a profession.
Let's start with real estate investing, then we'll ask you about the profession part.
Okay. I would say find the smallest thing you can get your hands on and focus on quick cycles.
Hmm.
Because at the end of each cycle, you're going to learn a lot. And if you're able to just build on that and then go from there, great. Because I think for me personally, my learning has been, I think I had this disparity between having a lot of technical skill, but maybe not a lot of like acumen when it came to how is it that I can turn that into how to leverage it well on the investment end. So I thought that because of that, then I would overthink things and think that I was being smart by thinking up to step 5. But by the time you get to step 3, things change and you're actually step 5 is not applicable.
Mm.
I think just thinking step 1, step 2, and just and really think like, how do I get myself in the first step? What is the smallest thing I'm comfortable to invest in, based on what I know and also what I'm uncomfortable about, and then just take it from there. I think that's a much faster, easier way to learn.
No, I love that. I mean, I think a lot of people have analysis paralysis. They plan, like you said, 5 steps ahead, and then you get to step.
Gotta get through step 1 first.
Yeah,
right?
do step 1 before you know how to plan for step 2, 3, or 4, because those steps can change, obviously.
Yeah,
and they do all the time.
And real estate is, I mean, that's 1, and 2. Basically, it can be as complicated as you can want it to be, but really, it can also be as simple as you can make it to be. So, I think for me, my learning curve has been forget about over systematizing, forget about like thinking, how, for example, how robust your financial model is. You just need to find the tools that serve you to solve the problem that's in front of you most efficiently. And if that's just like literally a napkin sketch and you just add 3 numbers and then subtract 2, and if it looks like it works for you based on what you're going to go for, that's equally as valid as having somebody full-time working on a very complex financial model with a portfolio, blah, 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 and exit route. And sometimes actually those things have enough points of failure as your napkin sketch. So don't be, my advice would be, don't be intimidated by looking at other people who are using much more sophisticated mechanisms of making it there. They're useful if it solves the type of problem you're trying to solve.
Oh, I love that, because mine is basically, what is my mortgage? What is my rent?
Yeah,
is there a gap, and
exactly. If there's a gap in there,
can I bridge that gap somehow? Is there enough land that I can bridge it?
Exactly. Yeah.
Awesome.
And then what was the other question?
Oh, just how would you get started in a career in real estate, whether that be architecture or something else?
Yeah, let's do it from the architect perspective.
Okay, so I would say from the architect's perspective, architecture is a I would say it's 50% work of love, 50% like a good long-term career. So what I mean by the work of love is you typically have to either go through 4 years of college and 2-year master's, or a 5-year college degree, and then you have to do all this work and test. Basically, take a very rigorous like set of 7 to 8 tests, depending where you are. I think, and then the test requirements change because they keep on revamping the testing. So you would think that then out of when you're done with that, you'll be paid like a lawyer, but in reality, you're making like a third of a lawyer. So let's say if you're like a cost-benefit analysis driven person, then don't do architecture. But what's nice about it is that building industry changes all the time. And at the end of the day, like there's very few things in this world that are as permanent as building. So if you really enjoy the process of being involved in something where you do it with the intent of improving the built environment in people's lives, it's a really amazing career. Wow. That's one. And the second one is, if you're done with your architecture degree and then you do your time and then you get sick of it, there are a million career options. You can go into construction, you can go into development,
right?
You can go into real estate,
consulting.
You can go into all different types of consulting. So it gives like the baseline is it gives you a good skill set.
Yeah, and you built a great business off of it. So
yeah,
awesome. Yeah.
And then the second question was...
Oh, no, I think that was it. What about if someone wanted to reach out to you for some advice? What's the best way? Are you on Instagram, or where's the best way to contact you?
I make it really hard for people to reach me because most of my clients want to remain private. I'm trying to change that. But that said, with Aria, I guess one of the reasons why I'm involved in technically a realtors association, is because there's a community aspect of it that I truly love, and because of that, then yeah, of course, I'm accessible to that. And if anybody has any questions about anything that I've said, I'm more than happy to be a resource. You can, I think the best thing to do is to call me or text me. But before I share my phone number, maybe we should leave that aside and then put it somewhere when it gets posted.
How about an email? Would that be easier?
Okay, email would be Ken, Ken, at villaprojects.com. Probably the podcast post will be able to include that, so you don't have to like scramble for a piece of paper or.
No, they can scramble. It's okay.
Okay. Well, then just rewind another 15 seconds and then.
Oh man, well thank you so much. Super
thank you for
enlightening.
having me.
We really
This is
appreciate you
great.
coming on the show.
Yeah,
Thanks,
guys
Ken.
put a really great show. Thank you.